Welcome into Live Good Dynasty. This episode, we did a preseason ranking for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and then we're starting to revisit some of those 5 games into the season. So we're starting with quarterback. So y'all can let us know what we do next, running back or wide receiver. We can do next. You can pick what you'd like to see first, but we're starting it off with quarterback. I feel like it's one that we can get a little bit more confidence around because I still feel like there's too many hot takes I have for the wide receiver, running back. I'm a little too emotional to start with those ones. How you doing, Nate? Are you ready for some quarterback rankings?
Yeah, the way too early reestablish our rankings podcast 5 games into the season, but yeah, this is what Dynasty's all about, right? We're just constantly rerunning the numbers and considering based on off of every emotion of this game and that we love that we can mess around with these rankings. So I'm excited to get into this.
100%. Well, first off, I want to mention our promise we have that when we get to 100 subscribers, and we got a good jump last week. So 100 subscribers, I'm shaving my beard, but more importantly, Nate is going to participate in No Shave November. So he's going to grow out whatever he can for one full month, ruining Thanksgiving pictures, whatever he's got going on. His not. I don't know if you've cleared that with your wife yet. You said you don't need to. Has there been pushback? How are we doing with that promise?
I got some awkward stares from my kids. My wife wasn't super stoked about it, but I think it's going to get worse now because what you just said, we traditionally take our Christmas pictures the day after Thanksgiving.
Okay,
Um,
so
so
please subscribe because I want to ruin this man's family portraits. Get
oh
the
boy,
Christmas card going. Oh
yeah,
man. And that's
you'll
right at the end too. That's like you've got the
right.
full month to grow out whatever you can, and then you've got to learn how to comb it right.
Yeah, so I just want to put this out there. We're going to temper expectations a little bit. We're loosely using the terminology of beard here because we'll have some straggling hairs and some things that pop out, but we'll see what happens. You'll just have to wait and see.
Oh my god, those holiday photos! I can't wait to see. Okay, all right. So make sure that you support this and us by subscribing. We have a modest goal of getting to 100 before we bridge that goal further and we get another bet going. All right. So that being said, if you are on, this is for YouTube. If we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on iHeartRadio, we are on Amazon Podcasts. So those, what helps there is ratings. So ratings following the channel there, and then on YouTube, what helps us is the comments themselves, as well as liking and subscribing, and specifically again subscribing. So this man has to do that. I mean, I'm going to be in just as bad shape because this is here for a reason. So you get to meet another chin. All right, so I wanted to kick it off with just a quick feature request for Sleeper. And then I have a keep trade cut question for you, and then we'll get into our rankings themselves. But first, a word from our intro. Sleeper feature request. Okay, what I really want to see here is if I send out trades, I love the expiration that Sleeper has. You can say by the end of the day, for an hour, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks. They have so many options, but the one that it seems missing, I'll tell you my wish list one, and then knowing that the development might be more complicated than the easy one. Okay, wish list one. By game time, the start of game time, it should expire for the first player that's in the trade. So if there's a Thursday night or a
That
6
makes
a.m.
sense.
Sunday morning one, expire it. Now, if that is too much development and they only have it by a calendar, it's not connected like to the game times and everything, end of Saturday expiration is what my request is. Because I like to send out the expirations. Um, I hate the idea of having a player possibly get injured and then someone accepts a trade. And I hate playing with anybody who would actually accept that trade and request that it go through. But but to protect everybody, I think that end of day Saturday would be pretty awesome to have for an expiration date.
Yeah, it's a weird fine line to walk, the integrity line within fantasy football. But yeah, I 100% agree with that. That drives me absolutely bonkers. Um,
I'll tell
I've
you where
had
the integrity line is. It's if you sent me a trade and meaning to trade me Brian Robinson and it was Bijan Robinson and I accepted, I am not going back on that because you shouldn't have done that. But if it was, but if it was left open and somebody got injured and then I accept, now that's dirty. I feel so. There's my line, very well defined for you.
It's almost like I used to do that to somebody, um, over and over again. Yeah, I like that. End of Saturday request. Yeah, I don't know how complicated that would be, but it makes total sense to me. So, sleeper, if you're out there, let's get it done.
Let's do it. All right, now this keep trade cut came up for me when I was like just pulling up a random one, and it was interesting, and it's kind of a sneak peek of like when we do our wide receiver rankings. I'm kind of curious on how it'll be, but Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Malik Neighbors keep trade cut.
Holy shnikes.
Yeah,
That's a good one. All right. So in this situation, I think I am 5 games in, and this is going against everything I've said in the last few weeks about how I want to rank current rookies. But I think my keep is Malik Neighbors.
your keep over Chase.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, that's spicy.
It is spicy. I think there's a lot to be said to someone that can perform the way that they can, that they are, from while catching passes from a guy named Daniel Jones. I think that he is currently the epitome of, and again, this is an overreaction, highly overreacted
And you're
take.
speaking
Super
Dynasty
spicy.
specifically.
Yeah, I'm speaking Dynasty
Okay,
specifically.
yeah.
Wanting to keep him. But yeah, Jamar Chase is probably the right answer, but Malik Neighbors is probably who I would go with in this scenario. Trade Jamar Chase. I hate that this is keep trade cut. It's like,
Yeah,
isn't there start bench cut? Isn't that what normally what you would do? But
it's for
in
the
the
week.
situation,
It's for the week.
yeah. But yeah, trade Jamar Chase, and then if we had what world would we be doing this? But if we had to cut Amon Ra,
Wow. I thought I was being spicy. I have Jamar keep Neighbors cut or sorry, keep Chase trade Neighbors cut Amon-Ra. And I thought that was being spicy, but to have Neighbors all the way up top,
yeah.
that's very spicy. Okay, cool. And you just gained 3 years. There you go. All right. Well, again, we'll say it one more time. We're doing quarterback rankings now, and I'm kind of split on whether I want to do running back or wide receiver next week. So, as we mentioned in the beginning, commenting always helps the channel out, but we also just like engaging with y'all. So, this one would be a specific ask: is comment on if we should do running back or wide receiver re-ranks next week.
And we're
All right.
doing both of those before our kicker ranking.
That was close. You almost got me on the. You almost got me to swear. Shout out to Jason Kelsey for the shout out to Jason Kelsey for like the agreeing on kickers being absolute garbage and saying it. I was excited that he shared the same sentiment as I do.
I watched that clip, and when he said just have him throw it through the uprights, I was like, that is so Arlen. Like,
I liked his idea of like if you did throw it and you had to hit the hit the
hit the
goalpost. It's
post.
only a
Yeah,
single one.
make it
That
one
was
post.
funny. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting out, we've got two quarterbacks. Oh, actually, yeah, we've got two quarterbacks that didn't make the list combined for us from when we did it in the preseason. And just to re-rank or repeat what we had in the preseason, our rankings was from 10 to first. Mine was Jordan Love, Jayden Daniels, CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson. Spoiler, that's who has not made it back. Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and for yourself, it was Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow at 7. 6 was Anthony Richardson, Lamar Jackson, Stroud, Mahomes, Hurts, and Josh Allen. But you actually had a second person that fell off from the last one.
Yeah. I can only be a fan so hard, and unfortunately for me, Justin Herbert, I have to admit, is not a top 10 dynasty quarterback anymore. He's not a top 12. He's still a top 15. He's a top 15 Dynasty quarterback.
You all right?
I'll be okay. Yeah, it's I'd be doing better if he was not so hurt and we're off to a rough start to the season, because it was one of the things that we called out. Like, if they're not going to be a great fantasy team, I want them to be a great football team, and jury's still out 5 weeks in. But anyway, let's get to these quarterback rankings. Otherwise, I'm going to break my heart a little bit.
Yeah, no, let's do that. Mine is a little spicy. But the decision was made at number 10.
Actually, before we get into that, real quick, just one quick question. Are we being too emotionally reactive taking Anthony Richardson out of our top 10?
It's less about... Okay, so it was a pretty far drop because I had him at 4 and you had him at 6. And I think it's a fair question to ask. When the question started being, should they keep playing with Joe Flacco or put Anthony Richardson back in, that was the moment where I said, he can't possibly be in my top 10. He's got the same upside, but he's atrocious at the job that he's supposed to do, which is throwing it. And so he can break fantasy with his legs, but now he becomes the Justin Fields category to me, almost, where at least that's where it's like, it's all projections right now. Could he come back? Could he figure it out? Could he do it? Yes. And then we would re-rank again, like, okay, it's possible. But my guess would be that he's closer to a Justin Fields where he can start, he can do great for fantasy when he starts. But the question is he good enough to convince the team to keep starting him and not look for other options? And I think there he's lost that piece that knocks him out of the top 10.
Gotcha. Okay, I can see it. And like I said, this is the way too early rankings, and 5 more games from now, if he has a run of great games and figures out how to use his arm again, we'll have that other conversation. But I don't appreciate the disrespect for my championship caliber MVP Joe Flacco. I just want to call that out.
Hey, he did that while he was doing things for the Browns. So I love a little love for the man until he threw 4 interceptions in the playoff game. All right, so
it did lead me to a win this past week over the person that's supposed to be ranked as the best.
I did not think we should talk about that. Congratulations on your win against me, even though I was projected to win by 30. We should... All right, so another one that I might be a little too reactive on is my number 10. But when I see Patrick Mahomes being dropped in multiple leagues, and he's officially gotten to the point where he's a streaming option, and then his wide receiver's injured, and then we'll probably have court or suspension or something next year when he actually gets back. So there's too many issues with Patrick Mahomes I kept him in the top 10 because we know what he is as an actual NFL football player. But it's been almost a full year and a half, 2 years, where it's been like an F rating on consistency, just not really bringing out every week. And I can't put him above the potential of others when he's already 29 years old. I can wait for him to figure it out, but he's approaching 30. He's going to be 30 next season. And not to say that he's not going to go well into his 30s, but I will say that there's young people that have an opportunity and a little bit higher upside. If he was a rushing quarterback, I would give a little bit more grace, I think. But
yeah, I think we just talk about these guys as players and where we have them ranked, because you have them at 10, I have them at 7, right? So not that much higher. He's out of my top 5. The last time that he scored 20 fantasy points, at least in the structure how we have our point system in our league, was week 12 of last year. And the last time he had a Patrick Mahomes type score was week 7 of last year, where he got 34 points, where he quickly followed that up with a 6-point outing. So yeah, to your point, the consistency is just not there at all. And yeah, a large fall from grace. And don't get this twisted, we're talking about fantasy, so don't come at us in the comments. He's still 100%. Probably the best quarterback that is going to grace the field this season. But as far as fantasy goes, he's definitely out of our top 5s.
Now, we won't go all. We'll kind of hit on some of the ones that are the biggest movers here. But this next one is somebody who was not in your top 10 or my top 10, and he was in your top 10. He moved down one for your number 10. Caleb Williams, and he actually got into my top 10. So you feel a little worse than the beginning of the season. I feel a little bit better about him. Talk to me about where you're coming from on it.
Yeah, it's interesting that we like kind of swung at each other there. So with Caleb Williams, I think it's just how the season started, right? Like he's now establishing himself a little bit better. He's looking good the last couple games. He was having some interception problems for the 2 game run, but he's had the last 2 games with no interceptions. He's looking better in the offense and figured it out. So a sign of things to come, but I feel like I'm judging his performance off of the last 2 games versus 5, like the rest of these players. So I think he took a huge dip. If I were to judge this off of the first 3 games, and he might not even be in my top 10. Actually, he wouldn't be in my top 10. So even though it looks like I dropped him a position, I feel like I'm really just letting him back into the top 10. So he's kind of swinging back in. So I think he's someone that's going to definitely make an imprint here, but it's not as much of a lock as I thought he would be, and a lot of people did.
Yeah, I guess my reason for bringing him in, well, first of all, he's got more 300-yard games than Patrick Mahomes this year.
And that's the barometer.
Yeah, but I think it's from how much he's handling and how much responsibility they're giving. So I think it's going to be a rougher start because it's not as simple as you start most quarterbacks. But he's shined enough where I feel that he this time at the end of the year, I think it'll be more. It's more of a bet that by the end of the year, I'll feel confident in him as the top 10. I mean, it was the likes of. It was like him or Richardson who's in, and I feel more confident about long-term Caleb Williams than Richardson. And I asked myself, if I had Richardson and somebody offered Caleb Williams for him, would I take it? And the answer is yeah. And I think, yeah. So I think that's like, it's like the trade test in my mind, and to validate those feelings of having him.
That's
at
like
9.
every barometer you have in fantasy football. The trade test?
Right,
I'm gonna make sure.
100%.
Yeah,
Because it's also
would I want him on my team?
yeah, and that's why rankings are so tough in Dynasty, because it's like a ranking for what team, what situation are they in. So trying as general as possible. But Caleb Williams I think is somebody that I would love to have over Patrick Mahomes in Dynasty, and over Richardson in Dynasty. The next one we agree on, Jordan Love. We have at 8. You have at 9, who I have at 7, Joe Burrow. I don't think we have to talk too much about him, but is there anything you want to throw out with Joe Burrow? He seemed to stick around the same place for both of us. I think he stuck in the exact same place for me, dropped down a little bit for you.
Yeah, I think just with Joe Burrow, the what you're going to get every fantasy season, he's proven it 3 year, or at least the last 2 years, and maybe it goes forward, is that he's Mr. Slow Start, and he might cost you your first 3 games of the season. So he's going to be lights out the rest of the way probably, but for some reason the last 2 years he's off to a rough start. And if we're ranking this based off of how the first few games have gone, I lowered him a little bit, but nothing too crazy. I mean, he's ranked pretty much right where he was.
I think the lesson there is it's the change. That's when the change of preseason, when they went to 18 games or 17, 18 games.
17 games, 18 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. When they made that change, they also stopped playing in preseason. And so they don't, that's one of the teams that just don't utilize him a lot in preseason. And maybe he needs that those extra game reps. So the first few weeks are really like, I think that's for the NFL itself, but definitely for the teams that do keep their players, their starters out of preseason. It takes a little while to ramp up. Next, we've got Patrick Mahomes. You have at 7. We talked about him. Kyler Murray stays at about the same for us. CJ Stroud is at 5. I think he's solidified. I feel more confident in him. Like after he started so hot, I feel great about him being in the top 5 for me. And then the rest of them is kind of where it gets a little mixed up with us. So I think some of the same people that we had last year in our top 5, most of the same people, a couple people dropped out. I have Lamar. I think our biggest discrepancy in the entire thing is I have Lamar at 4, and you have him at. We'll spoil it. You have him at number 1. So, what made you make the jump from you had him at 5 before the season? We both had him at 5. I moved him up 1, and yeah, he's been killing it. He's a number 1 right now. But the question was always boom bust. So you think he's gonna boom boom?
Yeah. And this might just be something that happens for this year, but I think they've figured out if they're not going to use tight ends and they're not going to use
Mm,
their wide receivers in the way that they could, that means he's running the ball like an insane person. He's this year alone, he's outpacing most of like if we're talking about Josh Allen in comparison, who was my previous number one, for rushing yards at least 200 more rushing yards so far in just
hmm
5 games, right? The same amount of touchdowns. So he's running the ball a ton. He's going to um, get you that way. He's still thrown for 9 touchdowns this season, and so I think he justifiably leapfrogs Josh Allen for me because they're the same age, or actually Lamar might even be a year younger than Josh Allen. Um, yeah,
Which
so
matters more with these mobile quarterbacks
yeah,
than
yeah,
a Murray or a Burrow.
right, right. So I'm just in a spot where if he's going to have Derrick Henry next to him, and I know that that's not going to be forever and not very long lived potentially with but until Derrick Henry proves us differently, and we'll talk about him in the running back episode, he's going to have a freight train next to him, and then he's able to just be able to scamper around the field,
Yeah.
and defenses just haven't figured out how to account for that. So
Yes,
um,
Henry and Lamar.
yeah, until they prove me other to prove something otherwise, I don't know how you can't move Lamar up. And for me, I just said yellow. He's number one. If out of all
I think that's fair.
quarterbacks,
Yeah, I get that. I have a few. I've obviously at 4, so I have 3 ahead of him. Jalen Hurts is the one I have above him that I can see by the end of the season swapping that. I there's Jalen Hurts. He has so many more weapons that are trustworthy that I think that I'm not ready to say that he has really lost a step because he's lost his weapons over the last couple weeks. So I really
right?
want to see over the next like 3 weeks when everybody's back how he does, what his fantasy value is. He's going to be up here either way, but that's somebody I could see very quickly in the next couple weeks if there's still such a large gap between him and Lamar. And I guess the argument is like Lamar doesn't have it and he's able to do that, but how long can you
Yeah,
do that? I like the balance. Like I've always liked Josh Allen because there's a balance between being able to throw it consistently and win that way, and also when you need to win on the ground. And Lamar tips a little bit more towards that win on the ground. And Hertz is another one that kind of has that balance there. So I want to see over the next few weeks if that returns and the gap between the two settles down a bit.
yeah, that makes sense. And I totally understand like giving him the a measure of grace just because his weapons haven't been there, and it's something that really drives that offense, um, and makes them that much better. But when you look at like it doesn't sound like it because Lamar hasn't been using the traditional weapons that he has. But for me, like even in the passing game, Lamar's still throwing for 1,200 yards in the first 5 games, in comparison to Allen, who's under 1,000 right now, and Hurts, who's under 1,000 right now. So he's still using his arm too. So I think the it's just not as apparent because he's insane at running, but
Sure.
the passing game's there too for him. So, but yeah, we'll see how Jalen Hurts plays out because you're right. I don't think he's lost a step. He's just not had what he's used to having there, which he gets back I think this week.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah,
So and actually, this is something that we called out weeks ago of that they're going to wait until the bye and Brown will be back week 6. I thought there was a chance they would adjust that with Smith being out too, but yeah, I'm excited to see him over the next couple weeks. Now, by far the largest mover next to Richardson down, but the the largest mover in general from our preseason rankings to our current rankings is our number 2 consensus, Jayden Daniels. Whew. So
yeah.
you didn't have him on your top 10
I didn't
before,
have
and
him.
I remember the conversation. You're almost apologetic, like you didn't want to put 2 of the rookies in there, but it was so close, and it was like one of the people that you kind of honorably mentioned. But Jayden Daniels has been, I mean, lights out, rushing more than any quarterback has in as a rookie. His I think his yardage and his a scramble percentage, or I forgot the name of the stat, but it's the highest that we've seen for a rookie. But then when he does throw it, he's over 80% on his throw, so he's accurate and he's placing the ball really well. And albeit there's a lot of short throws, but he's got some really great end zone tosses too. That's just right over the shoulder. He's been one of the best fantasy surprises of the year.
Yeah. You could make an argument just based on his age. If you wanted him number one overall over in my rankings over Lamar Jackson, with that much of a gap in age and what he's got ahead of him, if you want to make the argument that he's the number one, totally makes sense. This dude is insane. 300 rushing yards already. He's got more completions than Lamar Jackson. He's at 101 completions. He's got more than anyone else in our top five. Well, no, actually, I think CJ Stroud probably beats him. Yeah, but I didn't. I think my biggest fear for him, and again, we're only 5 games in. My biggest fear for him was injury potential, because of how he plays the game and how small framed he is. But I mean, through 5 games, he's proven us wrong. Justifiably made a huge jump in my rankings because I had him just outside the top 10, and now he's number 2.
Yeah.
And then you had him up at number 9 to 2. So that's a huge jump, but justified. Good job,
yeah.
kid.
And I think I think that's a really big. It's a big skill set to have, which will bite you sometimes, and more often than not in fantasy, you can have fast, calculated adjustments rather than taking too much time to make a decision. Because if you sleep on something, you have to move fast and just bet on, and that's what a lot of times the rankings of mine will follow. It's sometimes it is reactionary, but we have to react. So you're going to choose.
Yeah.
Are we going to wait and think about it more? Or are we? What is our personal opinion on where this is going to end up going? And I think you're right. Jayden Daniels has a case of. I think I feel very confident, okay, with him putting it at 2, and I can see the case for switching and bumping up to 1. For example, this is the first week where I'm going to switch it. I'm pretty sure, and start him over Josh Allen in Dynasty.
Ooh.
And Josh Allen. I've got concerns there, and I mentioned them in the beginning of the year of week 3 or something. I was saying a little bit of a concern that it's the start of something. But I think that that's still not fair. I think that he's going to bounce back and be more consistent than what he's been. But Jayden Daniels is consistent every week. And at what point do I start him over Allen? It might be this week. And at what point do I say, if it lasts 5 weeks and the age is there, do I make that switch in the ranking too? The only difference is I can see right now Josh Allen giving me a 50-point game and winning the entire week for me. And I don't see Jayden Daniels doing that yet. But I do see Jayden Daniels sticking for the most part over 20 points. And Josh Allen has given me less than that multiple times this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's done under 20 3 times. He's gone under 10 twice. That's rough.
Yeah. Whereas Jayden's gone under 20 once,
which was above 10.
Right. And yeah, over 25 3 times. So yeah, I mean, I hope he felt better that, as you're going through it last week, that you started Josh Allen. Even if you'd started Jayden Daniels, you still wouldn't have beat me. So it's fine. It's no big deal.
Facts are facts.
But at one point, at that same juncture, right? Let's say we're 5 weeks out from now. He's still being this consistent. Has a couple of blowout games. What would you even be? You've got all those points kind of just lying on your bench. If you put Josh Allen on your bench, what would you be looking for in a trade to give up on Josh Allen?
Well, seeing as how I'm in a championship run, if I lose Jayden Daniels, I have Josh Allen, so that's a really good backup plan. I've sent trades out every week with Josh Allen in it.
Including Josh Allen? Okay.
Yeah. So I consistently trade, because my plan was at the end of this season, I'm going to trade Josh Allen. And what I was looking for is something like an up and coming or younger, stable quarterback and a first. If it was a higher first, I think it can be done. I think people would be willing to pay that in the right situation, but I haven't found a suitor. So that's about what I'm looking like. So some stuff recently, I think I sent out like Baker Mayfield, like that. I don't know if it was that exact one, but that was like one of the type of quarterbacks, like Baker Mayfield in a first for Josh Allen. Somebody that gives me like a decent backup quarterback for this year and a first rounder. I might have asked for a first and a second or a third or something like that. That's what I'm looking for to move him. Otherwise, as a contender, it's not worth it for me to move away from him. But Jayden Daniels' success has given me the confidence to make that move now instead of at the end of the year.
Got it. All right, makes sense. Yeah, so for both of us, Josh Allen is or remains the number one overall Dynasty quarterback, but he's on relatively thin ice.
Yeah, and actually,
for the two of us,
as you said that, I just got a rejection.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. Josh Allen's number one for you. Lamar is number one for me. Josh is number 3. I've already moved Jayden Daniels ahead of Josh Allen in my rankings, but
now,
yeah.
I have one more final question to kind of close this out. When looking at this, assuming that you have, I guess, take your situation out of it, whether you're contending or not, for the most part, where is like a number 3 overall first round pick for 2025? Where in your top 10 does that slip in if you were to trade a quarterback away for it, or does it not?
A top 3? Let me look at my top 10 really. I don't know that it does. I traditionally, especially, I know you said take it out, but we run a pretty deep league with a ton of flex. So quarterback is not as valuable possibly in our league. So I would think that a top 3 pick wouldn't drop into the top 10 of these quarterbacks here for me. But what about for you?
So you'd say like it'd be past number 10 and you would keep all of these quarterbacks?
For a top 3, if I only have one of these quarterbacks, then yes. If I'm in your situation where I've got multiple great quarterbacks, that kind of changes the story up a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I think for me it's like the top 5 I would probably keep, and like the Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, those ones I might be willing to move away from. Is, let's say, I think Baker Mayfield is a great example of like a stable quarterback that you might have with a great one. If I had a Baker Mayfield and a Kyler Murray, I would take probably the 103 or so there. So split right in the middle.
Yeah, no one's really offering any of that to me because my starting quarterback is who I just deemed a possible maybe still in the top 15 with Justin Herbert, and then I literally do not have a regular starting quarterback on my roster beyond that. So
yeah, well, you got Flacco.
Got Flacco. Hoping they give up on Richardson.
Yeah, I don't know. All right. Well, that's been our top 10. Again, if you're with us still, throw in the comments of what you want to see next, running back or wide receiver. We never did a tight end. Kicker. We will not do a kicker.
I'm going to post a separate. You know what? I'm going to post a separate kicker video.
Arlen will participate. Oh my god! Fine. You're just gonna I'm gonna wake up and see some random kicker video on our channel.
Yep.
That I didn't know about. Cool. Kicker only league. Let's go. All right, y'all. Well, it's been real, Nate. It's been real, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
Holler, y'all.